Great to have you all here tonight. What a great turnout. Like Russell said, I moved to Greenville 25 years ago, and coming from the north, there were some things that I was exposed to, never knew about when I moved here, one of those being shrimp and grits, or basically grits in general, never had that before. Collards, never had that. Okra, especially not fried green tomatoes. But I love all those things now, and but more importantly than being introduced to these great foods, there are a couple of things that I indelibly remember 25 years ago and learning very quickly. One of them was that if you are from the Carolinas, or basically from the South in general, there better be Duke's mayonnaise in your fridge and nothing else, right? One of the other things is the father of Greenville, that his name is not pronounced Vardry McBee like I would have normally said. It's Vardry McBee. And that's the person that we're going to focus on today and share a little bit about his great influence here of our city. Now, McBee was born in the Spartanburg district of South Carolina in 1775. So he was actually a British subject when he was born. But he didn't get any type of much formal education when he was young. He ended up working very hard, very diligently, long days on his father's farm there in the Spartanburg district. And when he was 18, he was able to go up a little further north to Lincolnton, North Carolina, and get a job with a relative as an apprentice in a saddlery business. And it's in Lincolnton that the seeds of McBee's determination and risk-taking that would hallmark the rest of his life start to develop. Now, he spent a little bit of time in Charleston, went over to Kentucky for a while, but ended up back in Lincolnton. And there he started up his own saddlery business, became very successful with that. And also was a surveyor. He started to buy up land and was very good at reclaiming soil and farming land. And he was also elected to a couple of positions. He was clerk of court in Lincolnton and was the postmaster there. So one of the biggest risks of his life, though, came when the opportunity to buy Greenville came up. In 1815, just over 11,000 acres came up for sale. And against the advice of his friends in Lincolnton, he went ahead and bought it. And that's where we find him influencing Greenville for the next half century. Nearly every facet of Greenville's community he became involved in. So we're going to take a look at those as we spend the rest of our time. And the first part here is industry. And just a couple of years after buying Greenville, his crops started to do well. And he put up a grist mill in 1817 on the Upper Reedy Falls. So that's the smaller one there on the right. And then as Greenville started to grow in population and his crops were yielding more and more, he added a second mill in 1829 that we also see there. So back in these days in the 1800s, everybody relied on grains. And these were some very important businesses that Greenville needed, and McBee filled the need with those too. And he was utilizing that water power, that natural water power that was available there. Now, further downriver, he started utilizing that water power for other types of businesses. He had a cotton mill, a paper mill, a woolen mill, and a sawmill down there. So those are some very diverse businesses that he's adding to his portfolio here. But back here in Greenville, he had a tannery. In fact, he had two of them. One of them was by what today is McPherson Park. And he was very good at that. Remember back in Lincolnton, he had a saddlery, so he knew how to work with leather. And so that's another business he had. But the next four categories here are things that he started up that we needed to build this city. When he bought Greenville, it was just a sleepy little village. By the time that McBee died, we had developed into a town and then to a city. And he was contributing to all of this growth throughout his life. And we needed lumber to build buildings, so he built a sawmill. He had an ironworks to do all the tools and the nails and implements, bricks to build buildings, and the stone quarry. Of course, that is now Rock Quarry Garden, which is one of my most favorite places in Greenville to visit. Thank you, Vardry McBee. So those are some of the other parts of industry that he was developing here. Now, agriculture was probably the thing that was most passionate to McBee. In the early 1800s, he started reading everything he could about the new developments that were going on with getting soil to come back from being depleted. And there was the agricultural revolution was just starting to take off, and a lot of new methods were being developed in England, and he was reading all about that and starting to implement that. And he was one of the first here in the South to really start to get it and to have successful crops everywhere with those new methods. So the irrigation, the rotating of crops, preventing erosion, the seeding, all of these types of things he was implementing, because back then people would buy tracts of land, use up the soil, and then move west and farm there for years and deplete that soil and keep moving. But he would buy up that old soil and start to make it productive again. And that's what he did for Greenville. Now, the 11,000 acres that he bought of our town, that's roughly the size of half of Manhattan. Or another term, about 13 Central Parks. So that was a lot of area to be able to develop. Commerce and trade was another important area that McBee had his hand in. Right on Main Street, just right near the corner of McBee and Main Street, he had a general store called McBee and Irvine. And he sold a lot of types of different goods. I mean, that's the kind of place that you would just get about anything you needed in town. Some of the things he was producing in those mills downriver at Conistea were being sold there. The stationery, yarn, different things like that. And he not only had a store in Greenville, but he started the beginnings of a chain store. He had another store in Spartanburg. He had one in Lincolnton. He had an outlet in Conistea. And when we think of chain stores, really the first one in America would be the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, or A&P. They started up in New York City with a few stores in the late 1850s. And then Woolworths came along in the next couple decades. But decades before any of those came along, McBee was starting to replicate his stores in the region down here. Now, of course, he didn't get the volume that they had, but he was very progressive and very visionary with his business. Education was another area that McBee had a huge influence here in Greenville. Now, prior to 1820, there were free schools in town. These were funded by the state, and it carried a reputation where if you didn't have much money, if you were poor, or you had an orphan, that your kids would go there to those free schools. So people that had money tended to take care of their own education for their children. But as more and more people were coming up from Charleston to stay here in Greenville, especially for the summers, they wanted a formal school. So McBee had 30 acres that he donated, which is now the area of Heritage Green, and helped establish the male and female academies. And so the first school comes to Greenville largely because of McBee. And by the way, that's why we have Academy Street, because that's where the male and female academies were. Now, not only was the first school rooted in McBee, but Furman. Now, most cities have their historic colleges. Charleston has the College of Charleston. Columbia has USC. Greenville has Furman. Now, they were in 3 different towns before coming here, but it was a big deal to get higher education in your town. And they were looking to move again. And McBee owned, again, the land, the primary real estate, right over there in the west end here, overlooking the waterfall. So he offered that for half of what it was worth to Furman if they would come here. So that was a key component in helping to lure Furman here. Now, this was their male college. Across town, back at Heritage Green, the male and female academy was struggling in the 1840s, and he was a key vote and influence in allowing those academies to become the Greenville Baptist Women's College. There was more demand for women's higher education, so they added buildings onto the old academies, and that became the Baptist College for them. Transportation was absolutely critical in the 1800s America for expanding, going west, and it was absolutely critical for Greenville to get in on that. Now, South Carolina was in on the early days of railroads. In Charleston in the early 1830s, they started a line out of Charleston to Hamburg, and McBee wanted in on that. So within less than 20 years, almost single-handedly, he was able to get that railroad to come up to Greenville. In fact, this rail line right next to the building right here, that's the original line from 1853. And I mean, to be able to have goods go in and out of your city with that kind of efficiency brought us to a whole new level. And not only could that, but you could go back to Charleston. Instead of taking 2 weeks on a stagecoach, you could get there in a couple of days. So that was a big deal. Residential Greenville is one of the things that I love to show off about our city. And McBee even has a hand in the history of that. Now, he did build some houses down at Conisty for his workers. But here in town, as he was getting older, he started to give land to his heirs for their future. So the wonderful community of Hampton Pinkney is the earliest existing neighborhood in Greenville, and have 4 beautiful McBee family homes that he supplied the land for. So we have the upper left William Pinkney home, who was his son, and maybe to the 1840s, the original part of that house. Next to that on the right, 1860 for his grandson, and the other grandchildren on the bottom, and 1873 on the right, and 1905 on the left. So we have these wonderful homes that grace our city that tie directly back to McBee. He was able to also attract leaders, important people here. Benjamin Perry came really as a direct result of the male academy that he attended in the 1820s, and went on to become a lifelong resident, as well as governor and one of our most important South Carolinians. John Adams was an important millwright and that helped with a lot of the businesses, getting those built around here. And Jacob Cagle had a lot of his hand in developing buildings and neighborhoods in early Greenville. So these are some of those early leaders that had ties to McBee. Now, tourism is, this might seem a little weird because actually tourism is kind of a pretty recent thing for Greenville these days. But hotels, we have 8 of them downtown. We got 6 more coming in the next couple of years. But who else would have envisioned that early tourism but McBee? And this home, Prospect Hill, was owned by Lemuel Alston, and when McBee bought the village, it became his house. But he didn't move to Greenville right away. He stayed in Lincolnton for a while, and he saw the opportunity and started using this as a hotel for visitors that were coming up from the coast. So he started that out. But of course, within about 5 years, the mansion house came and sort of eclipsed that. But McBee had the first hotel here in Greenville. And the spiritual aspect of Greenville. People wanted places to worship, and McBee provided the land for all 4 of these churches that were originally all on Church Street. Christ Church is the only one that's still there on their original property. These are all other buildings that were built for the Presbyterians, Methodists, and Baptists in later years. But the land was given by McBee and materials to build those churches. So he's even impacting this aspect of life. Now today we have a wonderful statue of him to sort of memorialize him as the father of Greenville. We have a street named after him. He lived to the ripe old age of 89. Now, the life expectancy back in these times is about 38 to 40. So, incredible lifetime of giving. And more importantly than just having these as memorials and mementos to him, we still have people today that carry on that spirit of Vardry McBee with the determination, the risk-taking, and trying to make Greenville the best that it can be. So, yeah, that Greenville. Thank you very much.